Grown black folks talk. Gentlemen, you are being set up. I know I don't have many black men on this channel that are my subscriber base, but I know that men can find out whatever it is they want to know. And because I am not part of Black women's empowerment and I am not a divester, I have deep concern for Black men. I love and I revere my father. I love the grandfather that I knew, and I revered the grandfather that I didn't, because his widow and his daughter, my mother, always give him honor and credit for everything he did so that I can sit here. And from all that they ever told me, he was one of the most loving men who ever lived. So I only knew my father's father for a few years, but he was one of the most loving men to me that I ever lived. The rest of his life I did not know about then. He had his struggles, like all Black men do. But this man gave up his name. Our family name is Mathis. Noble Eugene Mathis got his first check in California, and they had spelled his name Matthews, which is the name that I have now. If he had corrected it, his family wouldn't have been able to eat for 2 weeks. So before there was a Kunta Kinte and Roots, that we learned that this happened to Black people, my grandfather went through it and worked 3 jobs to keep his family fed. So I did not know him well enough to revere him in that sense. I know what he did. And this is why everything I sign is named for my father and my grandfather, Deanne D. Matthews. It is why if I ever marry at this point, I will move the M to the middle, Deanne DM, whatever. But I am never letting that go because that is my father's sacrifice for his family. So all my forebears, except for a few white rapists way, way, way back, are Black men whom I revere. I've had uncles and I've had friends in my father and my grandfather's image. I've known some very bad Black men, but even the worst of them, there was a limit in how much they would do to hurt me. God has protected me, and often through other Black men. So my experience, where there have been painful moments, I'm still a single woman, there's not been the rampant history of abuse that I hear from many of my sisters. This is not my personal story. And because of this, it is possible for me to have a place of deep, abiding concern about Black men because, gentlemen, you are being set up. How is it that the story of a Lamar Whitehead can go the whole circuit around? I mean, everybody, people who don't even know, cover church things. I mean, within 24 hours, there have been several major influencers who have picked it up. CNN has picked it up. The New York Post has picked it up. I mean, I'm just looking out there like articles are proliferating. But then you realize that New York has a Black mayor, and there are a whole lot of New Yorkers that are not terribly happy about this because New York is the city where racial profiling was just a thing that you did. And then you have one as a mayor, and the mayor has a criminal past way, 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 way back there with that same police department that he later joined. And so they don't feel like this man should be up over him. In the same way that there are plenty of places. Now he overcame his past, but then he's friends with Lamar Whitehead. Do you see why this story has legs now? Do you see why this story is getting big shrift? Because there's an election coming up in a little while. Okay, so that's 2 men right there. Okay. Then how big the story about Luka Doncic and the Phoenix Suns versus the Phoenix Suns. How Chris Paul and Devin Booker were sure they had it in the bag. They clowned and acted like absolute fools up 2-0. And poor Chris Paul, but previous to this, had been up 2-0 in 6 situations before this, but they were sure they had it in the bag this time. They styled and profiling in front on the court and at the press conference. And the magnitude to which the story that when pride goes before destruction and the heart is spirit before a fall, but the magnitude to which 23-year-old Luka Doncic has been elevated. Now, granted, in Game 7, the Dallas Mavericks, someone, a commenter said on one of the videos I watched, took up the floorboards and just beat the Suns. They were up as much as 47 points. They won by 33 points, and that's because they put their fourth string and let Dallas go, and let Phoenix come back. There was a commentator who said, "Well, Chris Paul has just bought the score within 45." They were having a good old time humiliating these two men. And this picture of Luka Doncic just grinning while Devin Booker's just like, it's everywhere now. Luka Doncic's regional countrymen, I don't know if they're exactly from his name country, Nikola Jokic, has now been MVP twice. The only black man who seems to get, and then of course LeBron James and Russell Westbrook and Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, we can't get away from looking at them, and they're being made to look like the biggest brats that have ever lived. Before that, Dallas has a black quarterback. Dak Prescott ran an understandably difficult play, and the game ended on a clock ball. That was magnified to levels that if Tom Brady had made a mistake like that, or Ben Roethlisberger, this would not have been as much of an issue. But that in the South, the idea that a black man is up over something like quarterback, that's still kind of new. That was a huge story. Chris Bridges, although granted, given what his own son said about what he did to the child's mother, okay, we can understand that story getting as big as it is. But do you notice what is being highlighted? The NBA before our eyes is highlighting moving these European players into the spot of black men openly. This is happening. The only black man who seems to get good coverage in the NBA is Giannis Antetokounmpo. I hope I said that right. And they love his humble attitude. Y'all are being set up. Deshaun Watson. Now, if he's done half the things he was accused of, I can understand. But there are people like Ben Roethlisberger have done similar things, and that's been covered up. Black men publicly peacocking and then falling has been a very big story for about a year. And I kind of predicted this because the way things are, those who believe in white supremacy took a big black eye in 2021. But because the people who are adjacent to this have control of the media, what is historically done is just when white men are going to be exposed, you've got backwards ideas like you're still carrying a defeated battle flag through the Capitol because Lee couldn't get it there the first time, but now you're going to do it. We got the January 6th hearings going on right now. But at the same time, the media is able to then take these stories of black men in authority and make them look like a plumb fool because they know what they're doing. The assumption in the United States of America is always going to be white is right. So if we can put some black men out there and show them behaving badly, the country will focus on that. The common people will focus on that. And they will, after all this with January 6th dies down, we'll be able to continue our program. But more to the point, gentlemen, the United States also has these numbers. COVID-19 has killed black men, at least in 2021, 9 times as often and shortened the black man's life expectancy about a year. Now, I owe some of those numbers to Dr. T. Hassan Johnson of the Onyx Report. Believe it or not, I listen to Black Masculinist News. I lurk. I don't get into conversations where I'm not invited, but I pay attention. I've actually learned a lot from Dr. T. Hassan Johnson and Dr. Tommy Curry. I don't agree with everything they have to say. I think their viewpoint is a little bit too much complaining and not enough action steps, but I'm also not a black man and I haven't had that experience in life. And people need to have somewhere where they can vent. And so I lurk, but I don't comment. And I listen to learn most often. The same numbers, the same content creator, Dr. T. Hassan Johnson, when he made his commentary about Goldman Sachs, pointed out that 70% of black business owners are black men. However, Goldman Sachs chose to give $10 billion. It's actually giving them loans, give capital to black women, about a million. And with there are about 10 million black businesses. About 7 million are owned by black men. And the ones owned by black men have the highest rate of employing others. Goldman Sachs has chosen to give $10 billion of capital to black women. Okay, but here's the data around the world. The data from all microloan programs around the world says if you want maximum return for a group of people in a community, guess what? Loan your money to the women. So, although I understand T. Hassan Johnson's historical point that this is being used to divide black men and women, historical data shows that loans given to women benefit the community more everywhere. It's not just unique to African Americans. Goldman Sachs is following some deep data. Speaking of deep data, black male unemployment last year cost the country $50 billion. So when the United States sits down and determines how much each group of chattel workers should be putting into the system, black men are coming up wanting, even with owning 70% of the businesses that happen in the black community. And even though they make more money than black women still by a few $1,000s, and even though they have high enough employment numbers, and even though black men are some of the highest paid men in the world, they're still coming up $50 million short. $50 billion short of what they should be generating for the price of their existence in this country. Gentlemen, you're being set up. You're being set up. You're being set up because your heroes are men who are considered to be finished at 40. When the Manosphere talks about the wall, I laugh because now I hear the conversation about LeBron James and Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant is 33. If he has an average lifespan, his life isn't even half over yet. LeBron James is barely halfway through his life. But they talk about these men like they've hit a wall. So when I hear black men talking about women hit the wall, I know they're projecting because their heroes are people whose life is over at 40. If you conceive of life having an opportunity to make massive amounts of money and live the kind of life that black men tend to imagine doing that is for. Shout out to the whole situation around Bishop Lamar Whitehead. We're going to have money so that we can have gold and jewels and be able to roll up in Rolls Royces. Well, all that ends at 40 if your heroes are athletes, so you've programmed your mind that you have no value after that by the heroes that you choose. You're being set up. You're being set up. You're being set up to believe that whatever it is you're going to do, you only have 40 years to do it. And also, granted, depending on what neighborhood you come from, I did not miss in listening to the amazing beat changes in Kendrick Lamar's Duckworth. I believe Ninth Wonder did his beat selection. In hearing Duckworth, which is the story of Kendrick Lamar's father and his best friend, one of his friends, I believe, is Duckworth. I did not miss the line said they had a couple of babies hoping that they would see college. Meaning that black people were having children, and one of those kids is Kendrick Lamar, only hoping that he would see 18 to 20. So 40 years can be a very long time when you have very little expectations that you may not even see 20, depending on where you live. And if you really listen to Duckworth, now, first couple times I listened to it, I'm just listening to these beat changes. I'm as a musician, and I'm like, it's amazing about those beat changes. Shout out to Anthony Adams, also known as Spice Adams, for doing the most hilarious video ever. And I'm sitting there along with him going, the beat changes are amazing. But as I listened to it and really listened to what the song said, I'm like, wait, did he really say had a couple of babies hoping that they would see college? 40 is very old if you only expect to see 20. And I've heard young black men talk about, I didn't even expect to be this old, and they're 25. So black men young enough to be my children, if you account for, well, no, I'm 41. So even accounting for early pregnancy in the late teens and early 20s, black men young enough to be my children, grown men talking about I'm surprised I lived to be this age. Black men who have gone through PTSD, seeing fathers, brothers, cousins, friends never make it off the block before the age of 20. 40 years old when you live the first part of your life in a war zone. I get it. I'm not without compassion. I'm not making this video to condemn the black man for what he's been through. I'm not even addressing what the black man is putting black women through for this video. We all know about the numbers from the FBI already that say black men are killing black men 25 times a day and killing black women 4 times a day. I've referenced it many times. I'm going to deal with the 25 times a day today, and tomorrow I'll go back to the other part. Right now, I live in San Francisco, California. And right now, Wells Fargo, in its headquarters here, is underwriting a jail worth $725 million in Alabama. Now, when a bank underwrites your project, they expect there to be a return on investment. So when you realize that private prison stocks, Core Civic, the name of the company, it used to be the Corrections Institute of America, very attractive stock price, was it 20% dividends? They have to have bodies in prison. And in order to have black bodies in prison, you have the 13th Amendment in place. So that involuntary servitude is abolished, except in the case of felony imprisonment. Many states have a copy of this federal amendment in their constitutions. So I know, sitting in San Francisco, that Wells Fargo in my home city is underwriting this kind of investment across the country. Do you know what that means, gentlemen? That means that there's a plan to have you, if you are young enough, go there. There's a plan to have you set up to not being able to form good relationships with women so that your sons can go there. And so they can repeat the cycle and make sure that there's people in prison in the next generation. Because people who invest in private prisons have their investments in something called lifetime income report. There is a middle or upper class white man right now, because I used to get that. They thought I was a conservative white man. It's amazing what you can get people to do when you know how to communicate. There is a middle-aged white man right now reading lifetime income report. Or at least there was. Last time I got it, I don't think it was still on the lifetime income sheet because that got a little hot for them. But who is sitting there being paid 20% dividends and counting on you, your son, and your grandson to keep up their investments. In California, the number of prisons being built is determined by how many of your sons are in 4th grade, 9 years old. And in some states, private prisons have the right to sue states that do not deliver them a sufficient amount of prisoners to keep up their investment. Gentlemen, you are being set up. Your sons are being set up, and your grandsons are being set up. And then I refer to reparations. Black women cannot get us out of this situation. If black men continue to be peacocking enough, continue to peacock enough, and fall spectacularly enough, and be replaced in the NBA enough, and baseball has done this, you wouldn't think it can happen in the NFL, but you better pay attention. They're giving 45-year-old quarterbacks. Cam Newton right now is going to have a harder time finding a job than Tom Brady, and Tom Brady's 45. You better pay attention. You don't think it can happen in the NFL. You wouldn't think it could happen in the NBA. It's happening. Because the argument that's being made is you're replaceable. You're replaceable in the highest paid black man income that there is. People talk about black man's income is still higher than a black woman's income, even though it's a few thousand different. It's not when you take out the athletes. If you take average for average, no, it's not. And so the setup is being made that you can be replaced in all high paying incomes because you're too much trouble. You humiliate your teams. That's what's being said. And set them up for failure. That being said about Kevin Durant, that you don't honor contracts. You can't be trusted with anything of long-term import. It's being set up. And no matter how much money a black man is given, and no matter his position, he cannot be trusted with it because he will humiliate himself and everybody associated with him. That's your whole setup with Eric Adams and his connection with Lamar Whitehead. That's the narrative. It's an old narrative. And gentlemen, that narrative accounted for keeping black people in slavery the political will to do that for 246 years. If the bulk of us slips back into that condition, your sons, your grandsons, your great grandsons, and your great great grandsons will be in this position for probably another 250. Because by that time, because of the black femicide numbers, this also means that black women may not have as much interest as you think we might to get you out. That's why that 4 times a day number in the age of the internet. I was sent a video today about a 29-year-old woman who was murdered by her ex in a murder suicide because she dared to say online how much happier she is after her divorce. He came and he killed her. What this means is that no one around that woman is likely to take a chance on a black man. That narrative is growing, meaning that if the script is flipped and racial profiling ramps way up on black men, nobody's coming. Gentlemen, you are being set up. And because I love my father, and because I love my grandfather, and because I love the black friends that I have to warn you as a sister. You're being set up. And if you don't take the steps to stop idolizing degeneracy and stop idolizing irresponsible wealth, the cost is going to be your legacy, your lineage. You won't have a legacy. Your lineage will be re-enslaved before your eyes. It's already happening. The facilities are being built. People worry about concentration camps. They are already being built for your sons and grandsons right now. I know it because I live in a city where it's being financed. Only thing I can do is try to get all the churches that are in Wells Fargo around here to pull their money out. But they got plenty of money to do it. So even if I can get that done, there are enough black churches that have enough money around here to change a single thing. Here is the thing. Gentlemen, at this moment, if you're listening to me, you are free. You are free not to play into the game and to teach your sons and your grandsons to get next to black men who are upstanding citizens, who know how to build for themselves and their community and get mentorship from them. There are still men like this next. I know many of them. I know they exist, even in a city like San Francisco. To stop idolizing the peacocks and find yourself some men that are going to have a legacy, that are going to have something to pass down. Find the noble men. I just think of my grandfather, who had a legacy. Both of my grandfathers not only have a lineage, they have a legacy. I know these men still exist. Some of you listening to me may know some of these men. Get mentorship from men that are have built for themselves in their community. Get mentorship from men that are in successful marriages. I'm not even talking about who he may be married to. If he's been married for more than 20 years and she's not threatening to leave him, I don't care what color she is. Go learn how that happened. Find men that are successful in living a life that is not enslaved to American materialism. Find men who are not enslaved to peacocking. Find mature men and learn from them. A woman can only help you so much. We are often asked to be your lovers, your therapists, your healers. No, you have to get with men. And some of you might even have to find some well-meaning men of other races for right now. And I know that's very hard because of the history of this country. But you're going to have to do what you're going to have to do, and you're going to have to stop relying on black women to do it. Because number one, we can't, and second of all, and the through couple, give it another half generation, a lot of us won't. But I tell you this, There has never been a move of black men in history where they have decided in mass to do the right thing and black women have not gotten right up and supported and followed them. Ever. Your problems that you may have with us will stop when you begin to lead in a positive direction as a collective. I promise you that. It has never been otherwise. Men are supposed to lead. That's right. And when you stop leading us into temptation and instead lead in the path of righteousness, black women will follow you. In fact, the founding of civilization suggests that everybody will follow you. But what people are not going to do is follow you straight to destruction. Because we know better now. There will be some black women, but not the ones you really want, that can make a life. You can make a lineage, but not a legacy. You can make babies. And for those of you gentlemen, and I need to say this before I close, there's a Noble Eugene Matthews, my grandfather, also my uncle Noble Eugene Matthews Jr., my father Samuel Lee Matthews, and several others I can name. Kiva L. McNeil, my pastor, Rufus Abercrombie, one of our leading deacons. There are many more that I can name, but there are also younger men. Eugene Goodman is only 42 years old. I found that out yesterday. Tony Gaskins, 38. Seals the Man, who I listen to sometimes, maybe 35. I think he's younger than that. Prince Petty is 25. Themis of Themis and Thal had a birthday, so I'm not quite sure of his age right now, but he's young. There are young men doing the right thing out there from whom you can get some advisement. Young men, your peers. I wish you the best. Even though I'm not married, and I'm not married to a black man, and I'm not dating a black man right now, I still want the best for you. I'm not putting this out in anger. I put this out, like I said, I love and revere my black male elders, and I can care about their sons and grandsons, and I wish you the best. But you're going to have to recognize you're being set up, and you're going to have to avoid the setup. And you cannot count on us as black women to do it because we were not designed to do that. There are some things that men who are worthy of the name have to accomplish for themselves. You will either avoid the setup or your sons will be back in slavery. Those are your choices. I pray you make the right one. I pray, let me bring my voice up. I pray that you make the right decision. Gentlemen, you're being set up. I have shown you the traps. Please decide to avoid them for the sake of the people that you will be the fathers of in the rest of the 21st century. All right. If any of you are left, thank you for listening. Have a good day. And ladies, if you are left, please be kind in the comments. Just this one video. This is all I'm asking. I'm going to say this again in the description. Real quick way to get thrown off this page. Today, I need you to be kind because we're not trying to throw. Well, some of you have decided you want to do that, but this is not that space. This is not that space. Word to the wise woman is sufficient. All right. Thank you for listening. Goodbye.